So fellow creator MKBHD calls this the smartphone camera of the year, and Mr. Who's a Boss calls this the smartphone of the year. So I decided to test those claims to help you make a purchase decision, so watch first and buy smart. Now I have this in the titanium charcoal color, and it's a color that you will like because it does give a premium look to it with a matte finish at the back, which does feel good in the hands. Very grippy, no fingerprints, no sliding around. But another thing that you will feel is how heavy it is the moment you pick this phone up. While 226 grams sounds like nothing because it is only 2 grams heavier than the Vivo X300 Pro, but in the hand you will feel the extra weight. Now this could be because it has a bigger battery maybe, but more on the battery life later. But with that heavy weight, that actually makes the phone feel more solid and planted, especially when just using this phone in one hand. Now the front is made of Corning Gorilla Glass Victus 2, and of course the back is made out of glass as well, but Oppo doesn't officially say what glass it is. However, to my touch, just rubbing it against my face, I feel that it is Corning Gorilla Glass 7i. Just jokes. But another thing that will make you lean towards this phone is the new flat design. While brands like Huawei is calling curved screens premium, I'm with Oppo and Samsung with their decision of making the phone a bit more flatter in terms of the design, especially for the screens. But one thing you wouldn't expect, and so did I, was the fact that even the camera bump is slightly shifted to one side, but surprisingly, there's almost no wobble when typing this on a table or on a flat surface. So that part, well done Oppo. But that being said, I'm personally not a huge fan of the camera bump design itself because I still prefer the circular camera model that the previous Oppo Find X8 Pro had, and also what the Xiaomi did with the 15 Ultra, and also what Vivo is doing with the X300 Pro. And while that's not necessarily bad, but it makes the Find X9 Pro look very close to the OnePlus 15. So is that a coincidence because they're all under the same group of companies? Well, but another thing similar to the OnePlus 15 is the phone's display. Very similar on paper to phones like the Vivo X300 Pro, but the only difference is the peak brightness is lower at about 3600 nits compared to Vivo's insane 4500 nits of peak brightness. But in real world use, the display is still very bright, indoors and outdoors as well. And the flat screen mentioned earlier will make you type on the phone easier, swiping feels more controlled. But another big win is that if you ever crack the display, well, the good news is that it is also very easy to repair because it's lower compared to the cost of a curved panel. But besides that, the colors over here on the screen is very accurate, text is actually quite sharp, and the content consumption is really enjoyable. However, while the stereo speakers does get loud and clear, but the sound quality itself is honestly one of the weaker parts of the phone compared to Samsung and Apple's flagship, as the EQ tuning over here isn't as rich. But one thing that I do wish that Oppo added is some sort of a anti-reflective display tech, not necessarily like a matte finish display like the Galaxy S25 Ultra, but something closer to what Apple did on their iPhone 17 Pro like this, since there are other few Apple-inspired decisions on this particular phone, and more on that in a bit. However, I do have one tiny little complaint, where the automatic brightness under low light can be a little too dim, and I get why Oppo is doing this, probably to save the battery on the phone, which brings us nicely, or a nice segue to the battery life of this particular phone. Now I'll be honest, with all of these animations, right, gestures and the smooth transitions on the phone software, I was a bit worried about the phone's battery life. Now while this phone packs a massive 7500 mAh of battery, but big battery doesn't always mean great endurance, because while the X300 Pro's 6510 mAh of battery gave me close to 8 hours of screen on time when I was using it daily, the question is how much more can I get on this Oppo Find X9 Pro? Well, I was very wrong in my initial thoughts because currently this is the best battery life that I've tested on any flagship this year. Firstly, I got about 44 minutes of screen on time with just 1% battery gone. Yeah, just 1 freaking percent. That was quite crazy. And the battery drain continued to do very well, where I ended day one with about 3 hours and 46 minutes with still 66% battery. So yeah, that was day number 1. As for day number 2, it gave me 3 hours and 54 minutes of heavy use with still 38% battery left. With day number 3 getting another almost 1.5 hours at 10% battery left. All of which means that you'll get an average of about 9 hours plus, close to 10 hours, and that is with a super heavy use. So yes, size matter in this particular case, and on top of that, you get an 80 watt wired charging where the charger does come inside of the box. Not the highest wired charging in the industry, but still very good, which takes from 0 to about 80% in roughly 70 minutes. And there's also 50 watts of wireless charging which hits around 80% in about 100 minutes. So yes, my friend, battery anxiety on this phone, totally not a factor. So amazing job, Oppo. But what about the performance? Well, this is powered by the new MediaTek Dimensity 9500 chip paired with 16GB of RAM, which is a LPDDR5X RAM, and 512GB of UFS 4.1 storage, and for daily use. This is completely an overkill. Apps just fly, multitasking is totally effortless, and everything feels smooth and very responsive. Now, if you game a lot, the good news is that the experience was really excellent with no overheating. Genshin Impact runs smoothly on this particular setting shown on the screen over here, where it was properly optimized, which also means that using this phone from a day to day just feels lovely. Now this runs on ColorOS 16 based on Android 16, and honestly Oppo has come a very long way where this particular UI is clean, smooth and packed with some customization. But here are a few little things that I really appreciate. Firstly, you can bulk remove apps or move multiple apps between home screens easily. You can also double tap to an empty area to lock a screen. And I almost forgot about the 3-finger screenshot gesture, which works very perfectly too. And even things like opening the camera app from the lock screen and closing it feels so smooth and intentional. Then there's also the Oppo's Aqua Dynamics, which is basically Oppo's version of Apple's Dynamic Island, where it shows things like timers and music, and it's super useful but not as powerful as Vivo's Origin Island, where for example you cannot drag content on it to trigger any suggested apps if you highlight a text, like what Vivo does very well. And speaking of some of the downsides, there's still lots of bloatwares and you can't fully remove the text label without having an external app to be installed over here. But there are other areas where Oppo told Apple, I will copy your homework, but I will make it obvious. Firstly, there's the Snap key, which works very much like Apple's action button. Now you can assign this to different actions, but the most interesting thing to assign to it is what Oppo calls the mind space, where it uses AI to analyze what's on your screen and saves it into a central hub, where you can think of this as a mix of a Germanized screen sharing and nothing essential space, where everything that you capture ends up in one organized place. And then there's also this, the quick button, which is iPhone's camera control button. Now by default, double pressing it launches the camera app, and in the camera app you can zoom in and zoom out by default. You can adjust the sensitivity and customize how it behaves, but the limitation of this is that you can't assign a single press button to launch the camera, where the iPhone still does that very well, where just a single press, it will automatically open the app. So yeah, this would be something very useful if you want to quickly take a photo of your son or your cat or daughter. Now, if you want a written recap of everything mentioned in this video, we do have one at our website at www.adamlobo.tv. Links to the website will be down below, where we also have daily tech news over there too. Now, speaking of taking photos, before we talk about the camera's performance on this phone, since MKBHD calls this the best smartphone camera this year, let's talk about this, the Telephoto Extender Kit. Now this is worth 799 ringgit, which is about 195 USD as of the recording of this video. Firstly, yes, it does similar to what Vivo does, where it is a physical telephoto lens, which attaches directly to your phone. Now if you buy the entire kit, it will include this particular smartphone case, which is surprisingly strong with the MagSafe-like magnets, stronger than I expected. Then there's also this, the adapter ring, which you need to slide on top of the phone, and a tripod mount, which is something that Vivo doesn't give in their particular telephoto kit. But what Oppo doesn't give but Vivo gives is this camera grip with all of the physical buttons for recording and snapping a photo, so keep that in mind. But what's also different is the fact that this is a 3.28 times optical telephoto, which is about 230mm instead of Vivo's 200mm. And in case you're wondering, no, you cannot interchange between the lenses to use both, because I tried that. Now speaking of which, camera wise, the setup is very similar to the Vivo X300 Pro. A 50 megapixel main, a 50 megapixel ultra wide, a massive 200 megapixel telephoto lens, and a 50 megapixel selfie camera. And the main difference between these two phones is the fact that the color signs are just totally different. Vivo uses Zeiss and Oppo uses Hasselblad. Now the weather recently hasn't been great, always rainy and gloomy, so I couldn't really test out the overall dynamic range, but other than that, I did get some really good shots on the phone. Starting from the ultra-wide lenses, they look great with no barrel distortion on the edges and look very nice both outdoors and indoors as well. Now the main lenses is obviously what's cooking well and it looks great in any situation. Now compared to the Vivo X300 Pro, this phone can zoom up to 120 times instead of 100 times, but my advice is that make sure to touch the subject to focus, because when I was going into my zooming test, at 10 times zoom it didn't focus properly as seen over here. But yeah, if you are one of those people who just love to flex their camera zooming capability, this particular phone will do you good. Now the portrait mode shots has 3 different focal length: 23, 47 and 70 mm. And yes, the quality was amazing with great subject to background separation. Even the strands of my wife's hair was really great, but sometimes it get things wrong. Like this 47 mm shot of me, it thought that the tree at the back of my hair far away was part of my hair. Even though it's in a totally different color. But other than that, it's all good. Now, this particular photo of my wife and my son did very well when it comes to properly exposing the background, even when it was very bright outside. Then as for portrait mode on objects, no issues too, looking nice overall, even the subject is further from you. Now, the daytime selfie shots were good as long as you have light facing towards you, because if there is backlight, your face might look a little dark, something that the Vivo X300 Pro and the iPhone usually does better. Now, both the portrait selfies have 2 focal length, 21 mm wide and a closer 25 mm, but the non-portrait mode selfies has 3 focal length of 21, 25 and a super close 49 mm. And what's with Vivo and Oppo making you do some super close selfies like this? Because you really need to stretch your hand that far in order to get you in frame, so I don't think it's very useful. Then the nighttime ultra-wide photos was very good and very consistent throughout. The main and the telephoto lenses quality was great throughout. Although I'm not a huge fan of how the 3x zoom made the image look a little over sharpened and the skies brighter than how it was on real life, then the nighttime portrait photos were really good in all of the 3 focal length mentioned earlier, but the nighttime selfie was quite a mixed bag, and here's where you really need to be mindful of where exactly the light is to take the best selfie. Now video wise, it goes up to 4K 120 FPS, so there's no 8K recording here compared to what you have on the X300 Pro. The ultra wide video quality during the day was really nice, so was the 1x or the main lenses, especially with moving objects, where it was equally as good on the 2x video recording too. However, one huge caveat that I must mention, or an issue, is the fact that when I was switching between 2x to 3x, they had this very weird abrupt lens switching. So let me explain. So while switching between 1x to 2x, it was nice and smooth, where the colors remain and the zoom was very nice and smooth as well. The moment when you go from 2x to 3x, as you can see, it shifts totally, and that really surprised me, because this doesn't happen with other recent flagship phones. But if you're just shooting on 3x, 6x or even 10x mode separately, it was totally fine. But when it comes to the quality, not so much on the 8x max zoom. Stabilization was really good during the day, from the ultra-wide lenses to the main, the 2x, even up to 6x as well. Now there's also log recording over here, but the lens shifting issue is still present over here in log recording, so probably it's a physical issue. But when it comes to the quality for the front video camera was really good with nice stabilization as well. But the dynamic range, if you're against the light, will degrade a bit, and yes, you can change the focal length in video too, so you only perform better if you have the light towards you, not so much on backlight situation. As for night video recording, the ultra-wide lenses look great. So it was on the 1x and the 2x video too, but here's where you start to see that dreaded lens flare on the 3x onwards and even the 6x, something that we only thought that the iPhone 17 or any iPhone had but right now it's also present on the Oppo Find X9 Pro too. Then the nighttime stabilization was good, not as good as the daytime, and the front video nighttime video was just decent. So to answer the question whether or not is this the best smartphone camera in year 2025, during the day yes, but at night, and the videos on this, nope. Sorry, brother Marquez. Now, if you're wondering if this is better than the Vivo X300 Pro, well, the only way to find out is to do a direct comparison, right? So let me know if you want me to do that in the comment section below, and I'll do one for you. But here is a vlogging test using the phone's front camera for you to hear how the audio recording is, so you can be the judge. Alright, this is a vlogging test using the front camera on the Oppo Find X9 Pro. I am in a rare, I would say, quite noisy with the environment, so this would be the best way for you to hear how the audio recording is. So let me know what you guys think. Test 1 2, test 1 2, test 1 2. Now, if you guys are enjoying this video so far, do give this video a nice big thumbs up to tell the people running the damn YouTube algorithm that this video is helpful for you, and do consider subscribing as well for future content like this. So thank you, and thank you very much in advance. Okay, so the Oppo Find X9 Pro starts at around 4,999 ringgit, or roughly 1,220 USD, and this is without the camera kit. And yes, it's more expensive compared to the likes of the Vivo X300 Pro, but it's slightly cheaper than the flagships from Samsung, Pixel and Apple. So if you're looking for a smartphone that doesn't feel like it's missing so much, then yes, you should get it. But the question is that, is this really the best smartphone camera in year 2025? Best battery life? Yes, but you tell me after watching this video. Or you can check out my comparison video between the Vivo X300 Pro against the iPhone 17 Pro over here to find out which is better.